1. When I was 13, one of my sisters moved back in after a breakup when she was about 18 or 19 or so. Unfortunately, with so many siblings, I am an only son with 5 sisters, there wasn't much space in the house. So she stayed in her small camping trailer on the side of the house. However, she had a cat, and it was decided it would be unfair for the cat to be there alone all day when she worked, so the cat stayed inside with us, and her litter box was in one of my other sister's rooms. All of our doors were right next to each other, by the way, so when it was unkept, all of the upstairs reeked. Well, one day we were all home, and she was working and discussing the continued nauseating smell we had to deal with while she was working. This is when my young, chubby, 13-year-old self came up with a clever idea. I proposed that I drop a deuce in it, and we tell her to clean it up so she would really get the picture. We all anticipated she would know upon seeing a human dump that it wasn't her cat, but we went forward with it anyways. So I dragged the litter box to the bathroom, opened it up, and squatted over it. I did my damnedest to hula my hips in a way to give it a true cat turd swirl effect to no avail. Instead, after discarding my TV in the toilet, I looked down at my beautifully human-sized light and dark marble brown log. Again, I'm thinking that there's no way she will think this is a cat. Regardless, I clipped the litter box lid on and put it back in my other sister's room and went downstairs to await the fecal reveal. Fast forward, here she comes, and my mom tells her, "Hey Jay, the cat box is stinking, can you get to it sooner than later?" To which she obliges, after changing out of her work clothes. So, as we all waited downstairs for the much-anticipated surprise, we suddenly hear her scream, "Oh my god! Oh my god, Mr. Whiskers! You guys come look at this, holy shit, it's huge!" At this point, nobody had dry eyes. We were all doubled over, laughing, but couldn't prepare for what came next. We all refused to go see her cat's poop, and said, "That's nasty, just wrap it up." Well, instead she decided to scoop my turd into the litter scooper and bring it down to us for everyone to see. She did a full lap around the house, parading this work of ass art to everyone, as I beamed at my creation like a new father would his child. Everyone was in between laughing hysterically and being disgusted, and she eventually retreated upstairs to finish the job. After it was all discarded, we asked her why she thought it was so unrealistic to be the cat's a few times. It took her several minutes to catch on, and we revealed the plot to her. Her response was to berate me for being disgusting, but I really didn't and couldn't have planned for it to go this well in my young mind. She said next time she suspects anything, I'll be cleaning it, etc. However, it was I who got the last laugh, and the stench-free bedroom from there on out. To this day, once in a while, I'll ask her if she remembers picking up after me, and it's become quite the story to tell at family gatherings and parties, etc. It took another 12 years for me to get that same high from creating something when my first child was born. Lesson here, clean up after your damn pets. 2. To set the story, I have epilepsy that is controlled as long as I take my medication. This means I am allowed to drive, I just have to have my neurologist fill out a form, basically giving me permission at least once a year. Since I am controlled, I usually only have maintenance appointments about once a year. I also am married with 4 kids. So my being able to drive is important to our daily routine. It's also important to know that my husband has a job where every 4 to 8 years we have to move. This takes place about 1 or 2 years ago with our most recent move. When we move, one of the first thing I do is find doctors and schedule appointments for everyone. After getting established with a general doctor, I got a referral to the local neurology department. To go anywhere else is like a 40-minute drive. Day of the first appointment comes, and everything goes smoothly, no red flags. I have been in the medical rodeo here in the US for as long as I can remember, so I can usually sense a bad doctor quickly. The hospital doesn't have the best reputation, so I was cautiously optimistic. After that appointment, I was hopeful. Big mistake. A couple months later, I get the yearly letter from the state in the mail requesting a new driving form be filled out by my neurologist. I call my neurologist and find out their procedure. They tell me I can drop it off and they will send it in. My husband offers to take it on his way to work because it's just down the road from work, and he knows I hate their parking lot. He drops it off, and we assume all is good. They usually give you about 6 months to get this form in, so about 6 months later I receive a letter from the state saying the form was never received and my license is suspended. Obviously, I'm wondering what the hell happened. I did everything on my end, so I called the doctor's office. This is where the nightmare begins. After that annoying menu all doctor offices have when you call, I finally reach a real person. I tell her the situation and ask if they sent the form in. "Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. Dr. Smith doesn't fill out forms. He just throws those away." A moment of silence because I was caught off guard by that one. I called several months ago and was assured if I dropped it off he would fill it out and send it in. "Sorry, he won't fill that out. He literally has us throw them straight in the trash." He is required by the state to fill out this form. Does he need me to walk him through it? At this point I was angry, and my husband, who was listening, offered to take over. He knew I was about to go off, and thought if he kept calm, it could be worked out. He is also familiar with the crappy medical system, and has helped me talk to doctors before. Comes with his job. My husband was on the phone for over an hour, and had to call a patient advocate at the hospital to get them to do anything. I was stewing nearby and growing more and more angry. When he hung up, he said the doctor's office reluctantly agreed to fill out the form, and the head nurse and patient advocate would make sure it got done. If it had ended there, I might have let things go and just moved on to another doctor, but no. They filled out the form wrong at least 3 times. These forms are super easy and take doctors maybe 30 seconds to fill out for me. I've watched them fill it out. He basically kept checking a box that implied he didn't treat me for epilepsy and my general doctor had to do it. Meaning this lazy ass was trying to get someone else to do it. The flaw in that, though, is I grew up dealing with this crap and I was by now very educated on how this was supposed to go. So I called them again. I decided to unleash my anger. "Neurology department, how can I help you?" I have sent over my form from the state 4 times now to be filled out. Once it was thrown out. 3 times it was filled out wrong. I need Dr. Smith to fill out this form today. "Your general doctor is supposed to do it." "My general doctor does not treat my epilepsy. Dr. Smith does. Are you stupid?" "The doctor treating my epilepsy has to fill it out. It's pretty easy, actually. But if it's too hard for the doctor, I can walk him through it. Or I can call my old neurologist and she can teach him." "It's really not required. We don't have to do that." "Nice try. I've been doing this for over 10 years. State law requires he fill out this form. Do I need to talk to a lawyer?" Yeah, just come by and it will be taken care of." My husband, the mediator, stepped in and drove to the hospital with me to get this taken care of. When we got there, he can tell the drive just gave me more time to build more anger. He asked if he could take the form in for me. I happily handed over the form where I had highlighted what needed to be filled out, and also written step-by-step instructions on how to fill out the form. I also reminded him if this went wrong again, I would be suing, and to let them know I would be reporting him to the state medical board. He was at first concerned that the state wouldn't take a highlighted form, but I knew they could very easily print a new one off. He took it in, and instead of handing it to the desk, he asked for the head nurse. He waited till it was filled out and had printed proof that it had been sent in. I looked at the copy, and knew the nurse, trying desperately to resolve an unwinnable situation, had forged the doctor's signature. No hate to the nurse, she just had a shitty boss. After I got confirmation I had my license again, I reported him to the hospital board, filed complaints anywhere in the hospital that could hold him accountable, and made a detailed complaint to the state medical board. I also left scathing reviews online as well. I found a new neurologist 40 minutes away, and the drive is a nice break away from the kids. Shortly after I reported him to the state medical board, I received a letter saying they were opening an investigation into his conduct, and that the entire department's conduct. They also asked I fill out a form stating I was okay with the investigation and yada yada. I filled it out and faxed it over. Just the once. I found out about a year later that apparently he now has signs hanging everywhere, basically saying if you are mean to me, I will be mean to you. The people said they saw those signs and left, and decided, also, 40 minutes wasn't that bad of a drive. I was also told since then they've had trouble keeping supporting staff in that department. I assume there was some sort of consequences for him to hang signs everywhere. 3. My partner Carl and I were friends at first, and when he lost his house due to bankruptcy, he came to live with me. He had no job, lived in poverty, on a disability pension, of which he gave his ex half for 14 years since his wife left. In contrast, I owned my house, had a successful business, and was pretty independent. He was very handy around the house and loved puttering, talking with the neighbors, and had a great sense of humor. He was clean and very easy to live with. We were together for 10 years. We treated each other well, but he had no rights to anything I owned and vice versa. I stayed away from his family drama as best I could. Carl had 2 adult kids, Margot, 28, and Todd, 35. The kids never visited their father, and when he called them, they rarely picked up or returned his calls. If they did pick up, they brushed him off or dismissed him entirely. I felt bad for him, but what could I do? They were like that for years before I met him. They were rude and nasty people. But he loved them and couldn't understand why they didn't have time to talk to him. Carl died suddenly one evening at 58. He had been in poor health, and finally his heart just gave out. Not 12 hours after he died, Margot called to ask if he had any life insurance. For a nanosecond, I thought that she was concerned about my finances, handling the burial, etc. But no. She told me that according to their mother's separation agreement, he was supposed to keep life insurance on himself, and she and Todd were to be the beneficiaries. I guess he never told her that once she turned 18, he had cancelled his life insurance because he was on disability and could not afford it. He may have tried to tell her during one of those phone calls, who knows. Later the same day, Margot called and asked if he had a will. She told me that she had already been to a lawyer. This was the day after he died, and that because she suspected Carl didn't have a will, she would be his next of kin. She would be taking over the burial arrangements, etc., and she was the beneficiary of all his stuff in my house, including his car, which was a used car but still newer than hers. I was pretty upset by the timing of all this, and couldn't believe they could be this mean and cruel, so soon after he died. He was their dad, and he loved them. She then told me she would be doing a walkthrough of my house to be sure I didn't miss anything of his. That was where I said, no, you won't. Margot was really pissed about my refusal to let her into the house and to take the car that same day, and conveniently forgot to tell me where they were having the funeral. She didn't put it in the paper, and she only told special people where it was. I found out later it was 3 towns away. But she did let me know repeatedly that they wanted the car and all his stuff out of my house. I knew that once she came to take the car, she would not be back to get the rest of his stuff, which she knew was nothing of any value. I would be left to get rid of a monumental amount of stuff at my expense. Cue malicious compliance. Now, dear Carl was a hoarder, and I mean that in the true sense of the words. Even if something was broken, useless, outdated, or worn out, he kept it. So he had 4 old-style TVs, 6 giant toolboxes, 8 computers, 2 dead barbecues, a floor-model drill press that he was going to fix, a bandsaw he found in the dump, 6 stereo components. None of this stuff ever worked. He was saving them all for parts, plus 198 boxes of metal parts from odd machines, trucks, cars, bulldozers, and buses that he salvaged and collected over the years. It was all in the garage, which he thought of as his man cave. 198 very heavy boxes. Guess they were packed quite full. Plus the pride of his collection, a 60-year-old 5-ton metal lathe that Noah used to construct the Ark. So, I parked his car at the very back of my 2-car garage, then shoved all the boxes of stuff in front of it so that it was impossible to remove the car without taking everything out in front of it, including the metal lathe. It took 2 weeks and a lot of effort, but the garage was packed to the roof. I took a picture of the garage with the doors open. Margot and Todd soon started screaming to their lawyer that I was not cooperating in regards to the car. I responded that I needed to see a legal document that the car was in fact legally theirs, registered into their name and properly insured, in case they drove it away. I didn't want to be held liable. I also needed to have the rest of the stuff taken away, plus I just had my driveway paved, so they had to have proper movers come to get this stuff, not just a couple of yahoos in a pickup that would damage the new driveway. They said they would, after they got the car. Their lawyer screamed that I was stalling and refusing to give up the car. He even went so far as to accuse me of selling the car. I sent the picture I had taken of the garage to my lawyer, proving that I still had the car. My lawyer said, "Where is it?" I said, "You can just barely see the roof, but it's there behind the boxes." He got a good laugh out of that. So Margot and Todd had to hire a moving and storage company to come and collect Carl's precious stuff. The metal lathe took 4 men and a special small tow motor machine thing to take it away. It took all day for them to empty the garage. I asked where they were taking it. They said to a storage unit. The head mover said something to the effect that there was no way this was going to fit in the one storage unit they had rented. Oh well. So in the end, the cost of the movers was $14,000. I heard this from his best friend. And who knows what the storage units cost and for how long they rented them. Perhaps they recouped some of the money they spent from selling scrap metal. Oh right, I almost forgot. They also had to pay for his funeral. Turns out I did have an insurance policy on him that I paid for and had planned to use for his burial, but since I wasn't told where the funeral was, I used the money to pay off the mortgage. It would have cost them nothing to be nice to the woman that looked after their dad for 10 years. 4. I used to be in charge of the printer room in a rather large company. We shipped a shit ton of product every day, and everything shipped had to have the accompanying printed label and documents. Nothing can even be loaded onto the trucks without this paperwork. Now, this was in the golden days of the 90s, so we had 7 massive 4-foot-tall dot matrix printers that did all the work. These printers were temperamental bastards, and if the paper jammed, the printer did not automatically stop printing. It would just keep pushing and jamming more and more paper into the machine, until, if left unattended, it would break down. Running the printer room was a 2-person job. When I started, I trained for 2 full weeks with the 2 current printer room employees. One was being promoted, I was replacing him. It was a rough 2 weeks, let me tell you, getting the hang of the job, the various things you had to learn, do, etc. One thing that made it even more complicated was the fact that each printer had its own personality with its own problems. Another was the fact that a problem in one printer could have a different fix than the exact same problem in another. The job would be quiet for 45 minutes straight, during which we did routine maintenance and such, but was really slow and quiet and restful. Because this company processed its shipping orders in batches once an hour, and then, boy, on the hour, every hour, the batch orders would go through and thousands of orders would come spitting out. Now, if you were on top of things and kept everything running smoothly, the orders would print out very neatly and quickly. But if you didn't know what you were doing, if you didn't maintain things just right, you'd get a backup and things would go to shit very, very fast. And when one machine went down, you had to fix it fast before the next one jammed, because guaranteed those machines would jam up multiple times on every batch print job. So, I've been working the print room for several months and things were great. Then my coworker gave his 2 weeks' notice. We tried to train a replacement, but he was incredibly lazy and got fired fairly a few days after the end of his training, which left me in the printer room alone. Then the bosses inform me that my position is being phased out, and I'm going to be replaced by 2 employees transferred from a different department. So not only am I losing my job, but I have to train my replacements. And I desperately needed a good recommendation from this company, so I couldn't just quit or half-ass it. I quickly learned that both of these transfers are lazy and useless. They had been with the company for decades, had friends in the head office, and knew their jobs were safe. I'd show them how to do something, and they'd flat out laugh and say, "Yeah, I'm not doing that." Every day I'd be trying to train them, and they would ignore me, chat with each other, leave to go sit in the cafeteria, leaving me to do a 2-person job alone. Luckily, I was good enough to handle the workload, but it was annoying. Mindful of the fact that I needed a reference of this company, I kept extensive notes on each day's progress. I clearly documented every single instance of the replacements refusing to learn, even listen to my instructions. I also followed up daily with my direct supervisor, and he knew what was going on. And my notes went into the company files and were passed up the line. Despite my scathing reports, head office did nothing. Now is my last day. This is the day the training process assigned for letting the newbies work alone, with no help or supervision allowed, to see how well they handle the job and the pressure. I was, in writing, forbidden to help them or answer any questions. As I expected, things fell to shit pretty much immediately, minutes into the first batch of orders. One of the biggest printers jammed, and the clueless twats had no idea how to fix the printer jam, because they ignored me every time I tried to show them how. So they turned to me and demand that I fix things. I'm sitting on a desk, coffee in one hand, an apple in the other, and smile and say, "Yeah, I'm not doing that." One of them is yelling at me while the other is basically thumping uselessly on the printer like a gorilla that just found a candy machine. Then a second printer jams. Paper starts spilling out of the back of the first printer, which, if you knew the job, was a really, really, really bad warning sign. "Well, I'm going to go to the cafeteria. Good luck," I say as I stand up. As I'm leaving, I hear a third printer crunch and jam up. I went to my supervisor and let him know what was happening. He said he not only expected as much, he had predicted so repeatedly to his supervisors. He once again specifically forbade me from offering any help. So I went to the cafeteria and read my book for a little over an hour. Then my supervisor comes to me to let me know what happened. The entire printer room is down. Every single printer either jammed up or actually broken. The company is losing thousands of dollars every single minute. One of the shipper and receiving supervisors finds me, all in a panic, begging me to get the orders printed. "Sorry, I'm not allowed to do that," I replied. Now several people are running around outside the cafeteria, all in a panic, running from place to place to figure out why they don't have any shipping orders. The chaos took hours to resolve, and I wasn't allowed to fix the problems. Anytime someone started giving me a hard time, my supervisor would intervene to show the memo from the bosses, stating that I was forbidden to help in the printer room that day. I spent my entire last day at work drinking coffee, chatting with coworkers, and reading my book. The whole fiasco ended up costing the company tens of thousands of dollars. 5. My ex, who is unfortunately my downstairs neighbor, I dated for 4 years, before my abuser, and his new girlfriend have a habit of laughing at me whenever I walk by them. I'd avoid them, however, they hang outside on the curb day and night, near the only entry and exit driveway of our apartment complex. Unlike when he was with me, whereas we actually used to go places every day, he just sits outside on the curb with his new prize, every day and every night. I left him because he was a loser, and after wasting 4 years of my life, he didn't want to truly commit to me or have a family, and took intimacy as a joke. Now he's with someone who is just as much of a joke as he is. And while I'm actually busy trying to get my life together, after a hard fall from grace, lost my baby due to domestic violence with my abuser. My mom had a schizophrenic episode, and she can't recover from where she doesn't even know who me and my sister are. And on top of that, being sexually assaulted by what I thought was an Uber driver. I'm now in the process of rebuilding my life, joined Alcoholics Anonymous, and am completing steps and working with a sponsor, and have been making appointments for medical and mental health. Been working on getting my driver's license back, and plan on getting a particular job soon once marijuana is clear from my system. So I'm keeping myself pretty busy and productive. Meanwhile, every time I leave and come back, they're constantly whispering and laughing out loud as I pass by. Sometimes my ex says, "Look, look," and I usually ignore them, but lately it's been getting under my skin and making me dread coming home. He's also been turning my other neighbors against me, who were once nice to me before, but now they're suddenly cold and deliberately ignore me when I've tried to simply say hello. And once I overheard him telling a new neighbor who had just moved in that I was crazy as I was getting onto the elevator. Well, today I got tired of it. On my way home from an AA activity, I stopped by a fast food restaurant and picked up a soft drink. While getting closer to the complex, I started already dreading their presence, but for once they weren't there. I suddenly got an idea and started pouring my clear soda all over the tan bark near the curb where they sit. Then I went upstairs and refilled my cup twice with lemon lime sodas, even mixed a quarter bag of sugar into the cup, and dumped it all along both sides of the tan bark on either side of the sidewalks, and some on the asphalt and the driveway, hoping it'll be more than enough sugary goodness for the ants and cockroaches to feast on. Tonight, when I return from my last meeting, I hope to not have seen them. If I do, I'm up the ante tomorrow, with either punch or chocolate syrup. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream 286. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please do poke the like button, and possibly share the video with family and friends. If you'd like to get the videos a little bit early, you can support me through Patreon, which is linked in the description, and you can do that for a few bucks or a few more bucks a month, whichever you feel comfortable with. Also, in the description, you'll find a link to the Hellfreezer Teespring store, and you can make donations during streams and videos like this one on a one-off basis if you wish to do so. While you're not required to do so, I do appreciate it, and it helps me out a bit with the bills and such. Alrighty, let's see. I don't think there's any other business today, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is, what is a foodstuff that seems fairly common in some parts of the world that you'd like to try but haven't been brave enough? I've always been very curious what insects taste like. You know, like candied insects, that sort of thing. I hear they're a very good source of protein, but I haven't quite been brave enough to try them. I may someday. I may be brave enough, so maybe I'll do an ant curry. Or, you know, like, instead of doing chicken and white wine, I'll do ants in white wine. Some mushrooms in there, maybe some onions, and ants instead of chicken. I probably won't, but maybe. Why don't you let me know what you think in a comment below? I look forward to reading your answers. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.